Hello there. So, it is time to read Sons of Binding Blood. As you can see, I've got my little princess here. She's beautiful. She's very kind. She requires a lot of attention, though. So, she might be interjecting her thoughts throughout the storytelling. So, I hope y'all enjoy this production of Sons of Binding Blood, Book 1, co-authored by Reed King and Josiah Stone. This is my foretelling, my half of the book. It is set into two different parts. He has his chapters and I have mine. He might read his and I will read mine. So, I hope you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed writing it. So, Waypoint 1. Corinth Hallow. "Son, over here," his father called out. Of course, he was on the roof again, probably fixing some non-existent problem. Zephyr's father, Hephaestus, had a habit of repairing things that didn't need repairing. Perfectly functional? Didn't matter. If it could be tinkered with, it would be. And naturally, Zephyr was always the one dragged in to help. Now that all his brothers were gone, well, except for one. The house was 2 stories tall and well worn. The kind that looked loved but tired. Patches of fresh white paint dotted the siding where his father had reinvigorated the place over the years. This time, it wasn't the walls. It was the roof. "Why the roof?" Zephyr muttered under his breath. That meant 2 hours, minimum, before he could even think about the rest of his chores. From what Zephyr could see, his father was busy reattaching loose panels and replacing the rusted metal sheets. Honestly, Zephyr knew he was overreacting. He'd helped with the barn roof last summer and actually didn't mind the work. The problem wasn't the job. It was how the job got done. Yes, princess, it always is. For starters, there was his younger brother, Ollie, short for Oliver, though everyone in the family called him Oily. The nickname fit him too well. Where there was a will, Ollie found a way, usually to do whatever he wanted. That meant Zephyr and his dad got stuck with the hard work while Ollie wandered off to supervise. Still, it wasn't entirely Ollie's fault that Zephyr was grumbling. No, most of it came down to his father. A skilled man, sure, with a knack for fixing just about everything. But he also had the tendency to talk. A lot. Every hammer swing came with a story. Every nail, another opinion. Sometimes the conversations were good. Other times, not so much. Zephyr and his father did not exactly see the world the same way. Zephyr was one of 8 brothers. He had seen plenty in his time, just not much worth seeing. His father's conversations usually revolved around one of 2 things. First, the great accomplishments of Zephyr's older brothers, as in more farming, and then second, what Zephyr planned to do with his own life. Funny thing was, no matter which topic his father started with, the end was always the same. His father getting the last word. When asked what he wanted to do with his future, Zephyr always gave the same answer. "I want to see more. Maybe all of Athreion," he'd say. "I want to be a wayfarer, someone who goes stronger by exploring the world." It was an honest dream, one he clung to, but his father never failed to shoot it down. You'd need an affinity for that," his father would reply. "And you know how rare that is. In our family, but also in the world. Zephyr would straighten up and answer as seriously as he could. Yes, I know, but you're a solid, so maybe I'll be a flow or a mind. He never said, or even a spirit, though it always hovered at the edge of his thoughts. No one became a spirit. That was a dream too far. In the world his family, everyone except for his grandparents, had grown up in, Athreion was shaped by wayfarers, men and women gifted with affinities, solid, flow, mind, or spirit. Each affinity marked the kind of power they held, the path their lives tended to flow. Zephyr's father was a solid, and a retired wayfarer at that. In his younger years, he had been what people called a tank, the frontline strength of the Vanguard Circle, a band of wayfarers who traveled and fought together. His father's circle had earned him a respectable amount of renown. In their humble village of Corinth Hallow, everyone knew his father's name, and unintentionally, that stung Zephyr. By all rights, he should have felt proud, or at least content. But instead, it had the opposite effect. His whole family had grown comfortable, not lazy, not lesser, just settled. Impressive in their own ways, each following their passions, shaped heavily by their father's steady sermonizing. There were outliers, of course. His oldest brother, Khajil, was easily the most impressive of them all. Their mother had always said he was will made manifest, her pride and prayer come to life. He had moved to the capital to join the Skyrim Intelligence Corps, Athreon's answer to an airborne covert force. He'd married a woman the whole family adored, and together they had 2 children, Asuji and Khaneel, with a third on their way. Khajil had purpose, real purpose, serving Athreion for the greater good. The rest of his siblings had a bit less direction, Zephyr included. His sister, Yumi, had journeyed all the way to the Hinter Reaches, a land wild and largely unexplored. She was part settler, part explorer, part wayfarer, just without the affinity. She mapped the unknown. Letters from her were usually rare and half destroyed by weather or distance. Next was Anthon, the brother Zephyr always felt closest to. Anthon had struggled for a long time, drifting without aim, before finally finding a path. Now he studied at Highmark Academy, the place where people whispered about as if it was the perfect forge for raw talent. Then came Borak, the family's self-declared hermit. Once the underdog of the bunch, before he grew both brilliant and stubborn. He had been expected to inherit and manage the farm family. Sorry, I need to re-say that. He had been expected to inherit and manage the family farm. Only he'd realized he hated farm life. Now he lived in the Portlands, managing a small distributing warehouse and thriving in his own quiet, meticulous way. Dukhan was next, following in Hajal's steps. He had been stationed among the island clusters east of their homeland, serving in the junior post in the corps. And then there was Denali, the shining star of the family, father's pride, the one who had inherited the mantle so effortlessly it almost felt unfair. Recently married, he'd bought land and already carved out a solid life for himself. He was genuinely a good man, supportive of Zephyr, encouraging even, but comparison had a way of poisoning things no matter how kind its subject is. Denali had taken up the family legacy, and now, slowly, quietly, the mantle was being nudged toward Zephyr. Zephyr reached the ladder and started climbing, boots thudding on the rungs. The afternoon sun was warm and the metal too hot. A faint breeze tugged at his hair, just enough to remind him that somewhere beyond this sleepy village, the world was big, vast, waiting, and calling to him. His father glanced around as he hauled himself over to the roof. "Took you long enough," he said, voice rough, but not unkind. He hammered a metal sheet into the place with a quick, practiced swings. "Hand me that strip." Zephyr passed it over. "You know," he said, "normal people fix their roof once every decade, maybe twice." His father snorted. "Normal people fall through their roofs because they didn't check them. A beat. And we're not normal people." Yeah, Zephyr thought. That's the problem. Around them, Corinth Hallow stretched out. Fields of gold wheat, clusters of stone cottages, and the old well that apparently had been built by some ancient wayfarer with impeccable craftsmanship, according to his father. Everything was quiet, peaceful, predictable. Zephyr hated how comfortable it all was. His father paused his hammering. "You're thinking again," he said without looking. He had this uncanny knack for calling Zephyr out like that. Annoying, accurate, and thoroughly fatherly. "Dangerous habit," Zephyr muttered. His father chuckled and shifted to the next panel. "You know, when I was your age, you were already halfway across Athreion, traveling with your vanguard circle, dodging bandits, surviving storms, defeating some monster the size of a house." Zephyr rolled his eyes. "I've heard this one." His father gave him a sideways look. "Just because I repeat myself doesn't mean the lessons aren't worth learning." He raised his hammer and paused. "You can't go running off without an affinity. It's not safe." There it was. The wall, the limit, the cage of concern. Zephyr kept his voice even. "I might have one." "And you might not," his father began, hammering again, each strike a little too sharp. "Spirit affinities don't just show up. Flow and mind aren't exactly common either. You need something real to build a future on." Zephyr felt old frustration coil in his chest. A future doesn't have to be the same one everyone else had. His father froze mid-swing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rushed past, ruffling Zephyr's shirt, carrying the scent of the wheat fields. Somewhere below, Ollie shouted at a chicken with all the authority of a drunken general. Well, at least he's not chasing the chickens. Otherwise, we'd be hearing their unbearable squawking. Finally, his father set the hammer down with a thigh. "You're a good kid, Zeph. Better than you realize." His voice was softer now, stripped of its usual iron. "But dreaming does not make you a wayfarer." "No," Zephyr said quietly. "But doing does." Zephyr stood and walked a few paces across from the roof. From up here, he could see the distant horizon, a faint line of blue mountains curled like a beckoning finger. Roads he'd never traveled, places he'd only read about. Someday, he thought, I'm going to reach them. Behind him, his father resumed hammering, each strike echoing across the roof like a stubborn heartbeat. The next hour and a half passed in the strange limbo where time feels fast and slow at the same time, not quite misery, not quite enjoyment, just the dull hum of repetitive work. Fortunately, Zephyr had done this enough times to run on instinct, which meant the talking stayed blessedly minimal. His father drifted into his own thoughts and Zephyr into his. To his surprise, they finished early. About an hour and 15 minutes. A small miracle rivaling anything small luxuries could have. Still, that left him roughly 3 hours before sunset and another 30 minutes before his mother would zealously sniff him out for dinner. His mother had a talent. No, a gift for making sure her sons did exactly what she said. Exactly when she said it. There were wayfarers with mind abilities who couldn't command people as effectively as she could. Zephyr climbed down the ladder, dusted off his hands, and surveyed the yard. Chores waited for him like patient predators. First up, Orshruan. The family kept a small herd, 8 of them, which Zephyr felt was poetically fitting, given the number of brothers. They grazed lazily in the pasture, blissfully unaware of how irritating they were. In his mind, it sounded like they were constantly saying, "Botherin'." One in particular, a scruffy brown one named Clover, had a personal vendetta against Zephyr. She glared at him as he approached, which was impressive for an animal whose eyes went in 2 separate directions. "Don't start," Zephyr muttered. Clover started. He pushed open the gate, grabbed the feed bucket, and scattered the grain. The sheep swarmed like furry locusts. Their smell wasn't pleasant, but at least it was predictable. That counted for something. Next came the chickens. Ollie had been supposed to feed them, but Ollie's definition of supposed to was flexible at best. The coop clucked with the complaint the second Zephyr entered. A dozen beady little eyes judging him for their 5-minute delay in dinner. Yeah, form a line or something," he grumbled, tossing the feed. One rooster, a pompous, strutting tyrant named Sovereign, attempted to peck his foot. Zephyr stared down at him. Sovereign backed off. Small victory. Take those where you can. And then he saw it. Wood shavings. At the floor of the coop. Needed to be changed. His small victory was forgotten. He would do this tomorrow. After the animals, he moved to the orchard. His father had planted the trees years before Zephyr was born. Apples, pears, and one stubborn plum tree that produced exactly 4 plums a year and acted like it deserved worship for the effort. Zephyr checked the branches and shook loose a few apples, snatching them out of the air before they hit the ground. He liked turning it into a challenge, testing how quick his reflexes really were. He would need to take those down to the store. His mother had an arrangement with the owners. Though we didn't produce large stock, for some reason our produce was always the sweetest. From there, it was on to the water barrels, making sure they were filled for the few horses the family kept. Water was never just water in Athreion, not entirely. Everything in the land carried a faint thread of aether flow, the subtle energy that pooled beneath the earth like quiet rivers. Most people couldn't sense it, couldn't manipulate it. But it was there all the same, tingling underfoot, swirling in wells, drifting through streams. Wayfarers could tap into it, shape it, strengthen themselves with it. Zephyr could not do any of it. Not yet. But sometimes, when he poured water from the construct into the barrels, he felt the faintest thrum against his palm, like a heartbeat in the liquid, responding to his presence. His father said it was just the pressure in the line. Zephyr wasn't convinced. The construct itself was old but cleverly built, pulling from an underground spring that was rich in aether flow. Horses drank it, crops thrived on it, and some said even the soil stayed fertile because of it. Zephyr topped off the first barrel, then the second. Good enough, he murmured, wiping his hands on his pants. After that came checking the fence line. Loose boards, broken posts, any animal wandering or mischievous Ollie that might have knocked it out of place. The evening light slanted across the fields, catching the blades of tall grass and painting everything gold. The kind of light that whispered, peace, whether you wanted to hear it or not. One true benefit his brother provided, possibly the only consistent benefit, was his unshakable sense that he alone was responsible for guarding every living creature on their property. Ollie's chaotic nature had somehow twisted itself into the kind of overzealous guardianship. In his mind, he wasn't just a kid with a crossbow. He was a silent protector of the chickens, sheep, horses, and anything else that breathed within their fences. Oh yeah, and the dogs shared the same sentiment. He constantly set traps around the property, half of which Zephyr tripped over, and the other half of which actually served a purpose. Ollie never went anywhere without his crossbow slung over his shoulder, loaded, dangerous, and absolutely not approved by their mother. Though, through sheer determination plus a frankly unsettling number of hours stalking through brushes, he had become annoyingly good at moving quietly. More than once, Ollie had dragged home a Vailrin, a sleek, long-legged creature similar to an Orshram, but with darker fur and pale sweeping antlers that glowed faintly under moonlight. Their meat was tender and their hides valuable in the markets. Whenever Ollie managed to bring down one, he'd swagger up to the house triumphantly, and Dad would help him clean it. Zephyr had watched them work side by side more times than he could count. Ollie grinning like he had just slain a legendary beast, Dad pretending not to be impressed, but failing miserably. Zephyr didn't mind it. If anything, he envied how effortlessly Ollie found his role. Protector, hunter, shadow stalker. Meanwhile, Zephyr was still trying to figure out where he fit in. All the while, his life hummed with its usual rhythm. The distant creak of wagons heading toward the market road, the smell of baking bread drifting from the Mrs. Wells' house, the children hollering as they chased each other under the elm tree at the crossroads. The low murmur of the villagers trading gossip like currency drifted through the evening air. Zephyr winced at the sound. He had experience with that particular economy. He was 17, old enough that most people his age had already moved into apprenticeships or trade work. Hallow School only ran from ages 6 to 12, giving children 6 years to cram in all the history, numbers, and basic reading they'd ever officially get. It was practical. In a village like Corinth, Hallow, most families worked trades that needed spare hands far more than they needed scholars. 6 years of school gave kids just enough time to learn the world's stories, sharpen their minds, and then decide whether they wanted to follow their family's footsteps or wander elsewhere. The system made sense. On paper. Living inside it was different. Corinth Hallow was small, quiet, and as dependable as an old farm dog. It didn't learn new tricks, never surprised you, and certainly didn't challenge you. It simply existed. And that was its greatest flaw. Zephyr set the large basket of apples on the porch of the store owners. They would know who they were from. Brushing stray leaves he hadn't seen from his sleeve, he figured he had maybe 30 minutes before his mother would summon him for dinner. Time enough to grab supplies from Harrow's shop. The walk to the village hardware took him 10 minutes. As he approached the market square, he spotted a cluster of young kids playing near the well, including the Varn's youngest daughter, Maris. Maybe 8 years old? She was balanced precariously on the well's stone edge, arms windmilling. Zephyr quickened his pace. Hey, careful. Maris, startled at his voice, lost her balance and tumbled backward toward the water. He lunged forward and caught her by the arm, pulling her back to solid ground. She landed hard on the cobblestones, but safe. Nowhere near the 15-foot drop into the well. You all right? Zephyr asked, releasing her. Maris stared at him, eyes wide, then she burst into tears. I didn't. Zephyr stared, but she was already scrambling backward, sobbing. Maris! A woman's voice cut through the square, sharp, alarmed. Miss Varn, the girl's mother, hurried over with 2 other village women, flanking her like honor guards. She swept Maris up, her gaze snapping to Zephyr. What did you do to her? Nothing. She was about to fall in the well. I caught her. Mrs. Varen's expression did not soften. If anything, it hardened. She's terrified. Because she almost fell, Zephyr said evenly. I grabbed her arm. That's all. One of the other men, Miss Hallen, the baker's wife, stepped forward, arms crossed. Maybe you grabbed her too hard. Zephyr felt his jaw tighten. He forced his voice to stay calm. I didn't hurt her. Check her arm if you want. Mrs. Varn pulled Maris closer, stroking her hair. The girl stopped crying, but was still sniffling, peeking at Zephyr like he would grown fangs. "It's all right, sweetheart. He's gone now." She said it loud enough for him to hear. Clear dismissal. Zephyr opened his mouth, thought better of it, and turned away. Behind him, he heard the low murmur of women's voices, sympathetic clucks, the kind reserved for narrowly avoided disasters. He kept walking. At Harrow's shop, the old merchant barely looked up when Zephyr entered. Ropes in the back. Don't knock over anything. Thanks, Zephyr muttered. He grabbed what he needed, paid, and left. On his way out, he passed two guys who knew of him, from Hallow School. Younger than him by a year, one elbowed the other and whispered something. They both smirked. Zephyr didn't stop, didn't ask. He already knew. Instead, he made his way home, with all haste, working up a sweat as he ran at a jog. While he did so, he thought about the kids he'd gone to school with. The same ones who had lingered in the small little clusters near the well, whispering like they were passing secrets. The problem with a normal village, if Zephyr had to name just one, was that its women needed a steady stream of gossip. The way animals need water. Not all of them, of course, but enough to turn rumors into a local sport. It was all fun and games until you became the topic. Zephyr never quite understood why people were so eager to label each other. Introvert, extrovert, loud, quiet, shy, overeager. Overeager. As if people were just jars that needed tidy tags stuck on front. He didn't know where he fit in. He liked people sometimes. He liked noise. Sometimes. He liked quiet. Also sometimes. Mainly, he also liked moving around, scouting a place before settling into it. That confused people. And when people were confused, they usually assumed the worst. Zephyr was lucky in one sense and cursed in another. He had conflicting looks. With his tall frame and broad shoulders, people pegged him as a strider, their word for brawny athletic types who lived for sports and even farm work. But his face did not match the part. Something in his expression, some hardened line of jaw or flicker in the eyes, gave strangers the impression he was itching for a fight, which couldn't have been further from the truth. He wasn't looking for a fight. He was looking for somewhere to be. Still, the gap between how he looked and how he actually thought was wide enough to ride a cart through. Add that to a handful of small but annoyingly noticeable achievements: top marks at Hallow School, first place in two Harvest Fair contests, which his mother had made him attend, and another unfortunately memorable presents. And Zephyr had earned himself attention he had never asked for. He didn't fear it. It just got in the way. Like a burr stuck in your shirt or a pebble trapped in the boot. Tiny, persistent, and hard to ignore. Corinth Hallow had a population of around 3,000 souls. Enough that you couldn't know everyone, but small enough that everyone knew you. And while plenty of impressive figures lived here, most were impressive for all the wrong reason. Case in point. Zodix, the son of Varin, and the brother to the little girl he had saved. That was the title given to the village's ruling family, a sort of local nobility. Each settlement, over 500 people, was required by decree of the Akura, king in the world's old tongue, to have a Varin overseeing everything. And the Akura, in all his distant, probably bored wisdom, expected his little system to run the same way in every village from mountain to marsh. Corinth Hallow's Varin took his job very seriously in all the wrong ways. And Zodix, his son, took himself even more seriously. He was the perfect storm of ego, entitlement, decorative cloaks, like someone wanted to wrap self-importance in fabric and accidentally gave it a pulse. Zephyr, meanwhile, had no decorative cloaks, just a face that people misread, a body that made assumptions for him, and a reputation he did not sign paperwork for. He wasn't bragging. He hated bragging. But he couldn't deny the truth. All his brothers had been considered excellent bachelors before they eventually paired off, and predictably, painfully, Zephyr found himself in the same spotlight. Except the spotlight came with whispers, and those whispers came with women who whispered them. And those women said things better left unsaid. He could practically feel the rumors rustling through the village like leaves in the wind, not quite touching him, but close enough to make his shoulders tighten. At least he was out here now, away from the hum of voices and the weight of other people's definitions. Somewhere a horse snorted, the fence creaked, and the morning breeze curled around him in a cool rhythm. For a moment, dusk golden light spilled over the fields, and the world felt, if only briefly, like it made sense. Zephyr exhaled. If only being understood was as simple as filling a barrel or checking a gate latch. But no. People insisted on complicating everything. And Corinth Hallow excelled at it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that production of Chapter 1, Corinth Hallow. Well, I'll let you say bye to my princess. Yes. So, Chapter 2 will be out soon after. Peace, my brother.